Hello, good evening, and good day to everyone. It is 6 p.m. UK time, so it is time to start our online patient meeting. As you know, we do have another special guest with us and another topic, so I'm glad to be back with you. And already, I would like to thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure you have lots of questions, so let me first remind you that we are here every single day from the very 1st of April to support you throughout during COVID-19 uncertainty. And well, very, very soon, I'm sure you will be able to start your IVF treatments. And I really, really hope that you will get some new good news as well very, very soon. And we are here to simply support you, provide you with some options, and present various topics so that you can use this opportunity to ask your questions, but also find out anything on your specific cases as well. And today, again, we do have another topic, which is self-care coaching for infertility patients. And this is a topic that has been brought to you thanks to our special guest. And you can see her right here. It's Monica Moore. Hi, Monica. How are you feeling today?
Great. I'm doing great. Thank you, Caroline.
Happy to hear that. And thank you already for joining us. And I just want to mention that Monica is a health coach and the founder of Fertile Health. And she is right now in very hot, I believe, Florida, right?
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought so. So thank you so much for joining and bringing this particular topic. And before we start with Monica's presentation, I just want to also mention that all the events have been brought to you thanks to our ambassadors and partners. And well, as you can see, Monica is also our ambassador. So thank you so much for supporting this initiative. It's good to have you on board with us. So I am very, very glad that today you will be able to also present as our ambassador. And well, as I mentioned, we will start with Monica's presentation. After that, we will go for the most common questions, and then we will simply go for your questions. So as always, remember to type the questions in the chat section so that Monica can help you out a bit. So don't hesitate. You can do it during the presentation and afterwards, and Monica will be happy to answer all of them. And I guess now it is time to start with the presentation. Okay, Monica?
Great. Hi, everyone. So as Caroline said, I'm Monica Moore. I am a nurse practitioner. I've worked in the infertility field for, I was trying to count the years, at least 20, I think almost 25 years. And then I started a business where I trained nurses in infertility, and I taught them. And then I realized I missed stuff like this, and I missed talking to infertility patients and clients. So then I went on to get my health coach certificate so that I can really talk to you about how to create your best self, both physically and mentally and emotionally prior to an infertility cycle. Caroline and I were talking prior to the recording and saying how a lot of these topics are they're based in theory, and there's stuff that you need to know. And this might be like a little bit of a quote unquote softer topic, but what I want to tell you is it's so important to be in a good receptive space, to have some good stress releasers prior to even getting information, much less going through your cycle. So I really hope that I can give you some strategies. I hope I can answer some of your questions. I really want this to be interactive. Although I have a lot of clients and I've taught for a long time, and I think I know what people ask. I love hearing new questions and your thoughts. And even if you want to type in the chat your name or where you're from, that would be great too. So I did just have some slides, and I do want to go over some things because I think a lot of us think when you hear the word self-care, you think of something quick. So a manicure, a bubble bath, lighting a candle, a massage. All of those things are great. But self-care to me means something different, and I teach it in a different way. To me, it means something that is sustainable. It means something that you have inside you already that you can access. You don't need to go somewhere, you need to pay for anything, you don't need to buy anything. It's your own internal resilience that by doing certain strategies, you're able to access it. and you're able to find ways to get through and to really take care of yourself. And I heard a really good definition of self-care right before the talk, and I wrote it down, and it says that if you participate in self-care, what you basically feel is you're saying to yourself, I am worthy of good in my life, and I'm available to receive it. And I think that's so important, because when you go through fertility treatments, there is a feeling often that people tell me of being flawed, of feeling like less than, of feeling like a sense of lack. And if I can get you to even move the needle a little bit into the feeling of abundance and expansion, and you're worthy and you're good as is, then I have done my job today. So we're going to talk about a couple of facets of self-care that are listed here. In terms of regular, I talk about movement, not exercise, for a reason I'll tell you. Quality sleep, nutrition, social interaction, which has been difficult with COVID, and some kind of mindfulness. It doesn't need to be a formal practice, as you'll hear. But in addition to taking care of ourselves, it really deepens our connection. And I think connections and a sense of community are incredibly important when you're going through this treatment. So let's talk about nutrition. And when I talk to people about nutrition, I really want to redefine feeling fit. So fit is not Instagram fit. It's not looking a certain way, in my opinion, in a bathing suit. It's not having a clear skin. It is feeling energized, it's feeling physically empowered, and it's feeling resilient to the point that you feel like you can handle anything. You have this attitude because of the prep that you put into it, using all these different facets to be like, give me what you've got. I can take anything that comes, as opposed to feeling like you just feel run down or you feel like your resistance is really low. So in terms of nutrition, if I had to give you one tenet, it's basically you want to eat nutrient-dense foods. So we all know the reason we eat nutrient-dense foods is because we need the nutrients, we need the vitamins, we need the minerals. But really, there's a psychological or emotional reason to do that. And it can cut down on stress eating. And that is that our body is craving these certain nutrients. A lot of these nutrients have to do with color, green leafy vegetables, proteins. They're craving healthy fats like omega-3s. And so if you give your body something that is deficient in those, because you eat processed foods or carbohydrate-rich foods that don't have these other components, your body will continue to tell you to eat, even if it's full, because it wants these nutrients. So providing yourself with a nutrient-rich diet not only will give you the nutrients, but it can help tame or temper some of that mindless eating, some of that stress eating. In terms of how to change eating and to eat well if you're not already, or to eat better if you're eating just okay, the studies show that we know what to eat, not to eat, most of us, with some, minor exceptions and some tweaks. Really, the difference between eating optimally is habit change. So it's keeping a good habit and it's stopping a negative habit. There's a couple of ways to do that we teach that I'll probably get into with some of the questions later on. But it's not about willpower often. It's about changing the environment and making very tiny, small, sustainable changes. I always teach first how people eat can make a difference over what they eat. A lot of people come to me because they've been on 50 diets, in their words, and I'm going to be their 51st, and I tell them I'm not going to put you on a diet. I'm diet agnostic. I don't even tell people to eat a certain way, but I do, and I'm very strict about how you eat. And so one of the components is that it should take you up to 20 minutes to eat a meal. When I have people time their first meal, it's for many people 3.5 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes from beginning to end, and we want to stretch it out. What I found with these chronic dieters is when I change the how they're eating, even if I have barely changed the what they're eating. So if they eat well, 80 to 85% of the time, many of them can get down to a relatively sustainable weight. So a couple of the tenets I share with people is in order to eat, you need to have 3 things at every meal or snack. And this is something simple that everybody can do, you can leave here with. You can tell your family members. So what I tell my clients is before you eat a meal or a snack, there needs to be 3 things: a plate, a chair, and a table. You may not eat potato chips unless you take them out of the bag, put them on a plate, sit at the table, as a chair, and not have distractions. If you do that, then I tell them they can have the potato chips. But you'd be surprised at how much eating goes on when you're not even realizing you're eating. You're preparing a meal and you're eating cheese and crackers, or you're rushing from room to room. This creates an awareness for people that a lot of people didn't realize they have. So even if you just want to take one thing away from today in terms of the how to eat, try it yourself this week. Before you eat a meal or a snack, you need to have it on a plate, sitting at a table, on a chair, with no distractions. And see, I bet you it will make a big difference. At least it will be an eye-opener. One of my other big components is you want to have a lean protein and a vegetable or a fruit at every meal. Notice I didn't say carb. Now you can have a carb, and the carbs should be chosen wisely, which is the next point. They should be unprocessed. They shouldn't be, because what happens is if the carb is processed too quickly, your insulin level goes up. And when we talk about stress later, your cortisol level goes up, and those two hormones want your body to store fat. So we don't want that unless you're in a starvation mode, which really none of us are these days. So we want a lean protein and a vegetable or fruit at every meal. That's the nutrients. And your body, even seeing these different colors, seeing and tasting different textures and eating mindfully, will feel satisfied. And that is much less likely to lead to mindless or stress eating later on, because the body feels like it's getting what it needs from that plate. Increase your water intake, cut out calorie-containing drinks. A lot of people end up drinking these coffee drinks or store-bought smoothies. They are pretty caloric, have a lot of sugar in them. If you can limit your processed foods, so basically anything in your pantry, to less than 15% of what you eat, that makes a huge difference. These companies, there's a lot of companies, and the sugar companies and the big kind of business companies, what they do is they add certain preservatives that make things taste better. And they actually, these certain preservatives can override your brain's hunger and satiety center. So even if you're full, your body will still crave it. And usually these things are what are not good for us, or a little bit unhealthy. So sugars, preservatives, saturated fat. And finally, just look for foods that don't contain added sugars. So if you have a milk product, like a yogurt that's unsweetened, you'll notice there's a little bit of sugar in the yogurt. That sugar that comes from the dairy is okay, but you don't want to have the yogurt that has the added sugar if possible. So a lot of people want like the magic pill, right? We all want something just to figure out what's going to make us feel better. And if we could take this magic pill and feel better, maybe we're giving ourselves the best chance, in this case, to attempt to conceive, have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. Well, if I had to name the magic pills besides nutrition, which I mentioned, they would be nature, movement, and sleep. So I use the word movement and not exercise. And I do that intentionally because the word exercise has a connotation for some that has structure. You need to do it for a certain period of time. You need to do it with a certain outfit on. You need to do it in a certain place. But what I've seen is people go to the park with their dog and they sit there, they throw the ball to the dog, or they throw a frisbee and the dog brings it back. And then they leave there and they go to the gym for 30 minutes. What I want to do is tell people, incorporate movement into your everyday life. Your body wants to move, right? It wants to move to express itself. So think of a really good like lead singer of a band. They're not sitting down unless they're at the drums or the piano. They're moving to express themselves. Movement is an incredibly great form of stress release. It's actually a great form of connection. I tell a lot of my clients to take a walk with a friend, or to be on a phone or a call and have a virtual walk with a friend, assuming that they're not near you or you can't because of COVID or other conditions. So just thinking to move. So if you were in the park with a dog, you would be running around playing frisbee. You would be running around moving. You would be running around with your dog, as opposed to sitting there and then feeling like you need to get to the gym to do it and maybe not making it to the gym later that night. In terms of using it to channel tough emotions, there's a ton of research on the neurotransmitters of the hormones that are produced with exercise that make you feel good. But all you have to do is talk to somebody who didn't really want to go outside or work out or move or walk, and they ended up going to do it or swim, and they just feel great afterwards. So I always tell people, if you get out and do it, tell yourself how you felt afterwards, but literally say it out loud. I'm so proud of myself that I went for this swim. I feel amazing after this walk, because what that does is it strengthens that muscle, that pleasure, that positive reinforcement of exercise to your brain or movement. Sleep is incredibly important, and I don't think we talk about sleep enough, and I don't think we get enough sleep. And so these Nathan Waller, who is I credit for these tenets of sleep, is a sleep expert. And what he talks about is that most of us are not getting uninterrupted sleep. We're not getting enough quality sleep. And poor quality sleep can cause a lot of problems, not just with appetite and nutrition. Sleep apnea can cause hormonal deregulations. It can make your hunger and satiety hormones so skewed that your body doesn't know if you're hungry or full. It can cause an increase in inflammation. It can make you more susceptible to illness, which obviously we don't want at this time or at any point, especially during COVID. So his suggestions are listed here, and I won't go over all of them with you, but you will have access to this on the recording. But one of the ones that I thought was really interesting is this one with the decreasing the lighting. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but usually, like if we were outside, it wouldn't go from bright to dark in a couple minutes. So what you want to do is about 2 hours before bed, you want to start to decrease the lighting in your house. You want to gradually simulate what would actually happen in a natural environment. And that seems to help people. And the last one I want to emphasize is don't use your bedroom as a mobile office. I try to convince people not to have their phone near their bed. Everyone tells me they need it for the alarm. I don't know why they can have an alarm clock, but the notifications, the light that comes off the phone, all of that is disruptive. So if you have to have the phone near your bed, I ask you that you put it on sleep mode. You can put it on a certain 10 to 6 p.m., 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. But the important thing is to think about is if you go to bed and you start to do work in bed, or you wake up and you do work in bed, your body associates bed with something other than sleep, which can be an issue if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're trying to go back to sleep because you're thinking, why can't I go back to sleep? I'm in bed. Your body's like, well, you do 10 different things in bed. How do we know that you want to sleep? So the last one is really important, and he equates it to you don't sit at the dinner table waiting to be hungry. You go to the dinner table once you're getting ready to eat. So consider some of those and maybe what your quality or length of time for sleep is. I don't have to tell you what these unique challenges are and why you are stressed. They equate the stress of infertility to that of cancer patients. There's an incredible lack of control. There's a feeling of uncertainty. There's a feeling of being vulnerable, right? We see you and often we have to have you remove your clothes so that we can examine you or do an ultrasound. There's long waits, now even longer with COVID. Fear of the unknown, fear of pain, your life's on hold. Caroline and I were talking about that before. We're like, we would do anything if we knew that in X amount of time we could make something happen. And so I think it's the not knowing how long it's going to take and when it's going to happen that's incredibly stressful. So what can you do about this? And there's a lot of different ways to do kind of quick stress release, which I think was in one of the questions that we'll talk about. But I want to talk to you quickly about something that I teach people, and that is having boundaries. So a boundary to me is basically a line that's drawn where that is what you will or won't do. And if somebody says, I don't know what my boundaries are, I tell them a lot of times when a boundary is crossed, you feel anger, frustration, or resentment. So if you feel like resentful, and you're not sure why, think to yourself, what could have caused it? It's probably likely that somebody crossed a boundary. Maybe you didn't know it. Maybe the other person didn't know it. It is very, very important for you in terms of stress and in terms of feeling control to determine what your boundaries are and to let everybody else know them. So a boundary might be like your aunt wants you to come over and help her move the house or clean the house. Now, if you have the time and you really want to do that, great. If you feel like you're supposed to be doing that and you know that it's going to make you unhappy and keep you from other things, the answer should be a really nice no. And sometimes I've spent whole sessions with people on the words for boundaries and on how to say no. Really incredibly important. You do not want to overextend yourself at a time that you already feel like your resilience is low. When you tell somebody that you have a boundary, don't expect the person to be explicitly happy about that, but their reaction doesn't matter. What matters is that they know what the boundary is and that you've set it and there's been a clear boundary. And we can talk about some of those after the talk if anyone's interested in that. So here's an example of some, and I give like literally scripts. I've actually role played with some patients who have like crazy in-laws or a really nosy coworker. So when you blank, when this person does that, it makes me feel blank. I would like you to something. Is this something you're willing to do? So here it is, you're giving them the option to not do it, but really you're not. But you're making it very clear. When you come to the house without letting me know that you're coming, I feel disrespected. I feel like it's violating my privacy, whatever your words are. I would like you to contact me first before you come over. Is this something you're willing to do? It's not about that person. It's about what you feel and what you're willing to do and not do. So if they decide to not change the behavior, we don't have control over that, right? But we do have control over is saying, I'd no longer like to discuss my family building plans at our family get-togethers. Then if the person says, hey, how's it going? Why aren't you pregnant yet? Seems like, it's been a long time. You guys trying? If you just relax, I'm sure it would happen. If you just go on a vacation, I'm sure it would happen. I'm sure like none of you guys have heard that one before, right? So then you said, remember we talked about the fact that I don't want to discuss my family building plans at our family get-togethers. If you want to keep doing this, I'm just going to have to make these family get-togethers fewer and far between. So it's not saying for them to stop it, but it's saying if you don't stop it, here's what I'm going to do. And then you have to abide by that consequence. And I listed a couple other ones here for you. So in terms of reducing stress, we saw that slide with all those stressful things in infertility. They're just exacerbated by our current climate right now, both economic and, with COVID. And one of the easiest and quickest things to do is breath work. So breath work is a fancy word for breathing, and you should make your exhale longer than your inhale. So some people will do a breath where you go in, you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 5, you release it for 6 or 7. Some people just do a box breath where it's you hold for 4, you inhale for 4, you make a box, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold, inhale, exhale. It is the quickest way. It actually convinces your body, it convinces the part of your nervous system that tells you to relax, that you are relaxed. So a relaxed person breathes deeply and their exhale is longer than their inhale, but it's bi-directional. So if you take your exhale, make that longer than your inhale, you fool your body into thinking you're relaxed, and then it actually can make a big difference. So in terms of quickness, speed of stress release, to me, you can't beat breath work. You can look at an app. There's a lot of apps for breathing. There's a lot of people that are practitioners for breath work. You can go online. There's a lot of simple YouTube videos about it. I do just very quick, that very quick breathing techniques. If you're breath work, like I said, you can really get into it, or you can simply do it. But what I will tell you is if you feel like you're in a little bit of a panic, if you're somebody that is having panic attacks, you feel like your anxiety is really, really kind of getting to the point that it's difficult to control, don't worry about the inhale. Take little sips of air if you need to, but really extend the exhale. That is telling your body, I'm okay. Even though I stress, I'm acknowledging this. I'm not panicked, and my body knows what to do. It knows how to manage this. I cannot stress enough the power of your inner voice. I can't. And so when we get to, even when it comes to nutrition, I always talk to people from the inside out. So when I got my health coaching certification, I also got a life coaching one. And I was like, I don't want the life coaching one. I just want the health coaching one. Well, when I meet with clients, I don't even get sometimes to the nutrition part till the 3rd or 4th session, because so much of it is undoing these negative patterns, these negative things the negative things that we say to ourselves. We are so much more unkind when we talk to ourselves than when we talk to other people. If you just sat there and you stubbed your toe, you'd be like, oh, what a dummy I am. I'm such a dummy. I can't believe I stubbed my toe. If you're a friend and you'd be like, are you all right? Oh my gosh, are you okay? That looked like it really hurt. Why are we so less kind to ourselves? We're the ones that have to live with ourselves. It like doesn't make sense to me, but we all do it. So really, really listen and acknowledge what your self-talk is. Journaling is great for this. If you're not sure what it is, write it down. You would be shocked at the things that you say to yourself, and you would never speak to anybody else like that. But it really starts to get into your mind, like you already have the potentially like, I feel like I'm lacking. If you have obesity or you feel overweight, you already feel flawed. Maybe I'm too big to be able to carry a pregnancy or whatever word you use. So that's another time that you feel lacking. Why do we need to make ourselves feel worse than we already are? So really try to acknowledge and monitor your self-talk. It's very difficult to live in the present. We want to kind of worry about the future or ruminate on the past, but none of those are helpful. So strategies for working on that as meditation and mindfulness. And making a shift in your mindset is incredibly challenging. So what I tell people to do, that's the quickest thing. There's a lot of things to do in terms of feeling your feelings and changing your stories, but they take time and they take practice, is just to change how you say things. So I'm going through a hard time right now, not I am a loser. I am going through a hard time right now. I'm going to pay attention to what I'm feeling, and I'm going to respect myself for persevering, having grit, resilience, trying to make a difficult situation easier. Really acknowledge that, just like you would do with somebody else, but make it really feel impermanent with that right now. Or right now I'm feeling frustrated. Right now I'm feeling angry. But I'm going to pay attention to it. You're not going to try to suppress it. That never works. And respect myself for whatever you end up doing to try to get yourself out of that situation. It makes a big difference to the words that you use and the stories that lead up to them. So this is what's called the mindset continuum. And what happens is you have a certain circumstance, you stub your toe. Thoughts and scripts and stories. Actually, let me change this. So the circumstance is that you were walking in a parking lot and this car started to pull out and it didn't see you, and you got really crazy and stressed, and the car stopped abruptly and you were okay. Immediately you go into that fight and flight, right? You start to breathe shallowly, you start to panic. That is what fight and flight is for in those particular situations, is to make you alert and to make you mobilize and ready to get out of danger. Okay. So let's say that happens and the guy gets out of the car, the woman who's driving, and says, I'm so sorry, I didn't even see you. You could say, oh, that's okay. That was scary, but that's okay. Because the feeling, the pure feeling of being scared or having fear, it's been studied by science. Can somebody type in the chat if you have a feeling of fear or anger, just the pure feeling, you don't attach it to anything, how long do you think it takes to go through your body, that feeling? So that you walk through the parking lot, you had that instant of fear somebody was going to back up and they didn't see you. You have that feeling of panic. If you don't attach it to a story, or you don't attach it to any thought or childhood issue, how long do you think it takes you, that feeling, to pass through your body and be gone? Anyone have any? Few hours, somebody said. The science shows it takes 90 seconds. 90 seconds. But what do? We attach it to something. It's just human nature. Our brains think, and that's what we do. So then we get into the script. That person was probably on their phone. That person checked their phone. They shouldn't have been on their phone. They never look. People never look at this as a particularly bad parking lot. This always happens. Yes, Carla, 60 seconds, so almost 90 seconds. Or I'm such an idiot. I was on my phone. I didn't look, etc. Then what happens, that 90-second feeling can last for hours. And then we sit in that fight or flight. We don't need it anymore. We were out of the danger of that car backing up. So we don't need to be in fight or flight. We can actually relax. But we're not, because this continuum keeps going, because we attach that feeling to a story or a judgment of ourselves or some other person. So the earlier you can act or intervene on this continuum, the less chance you have of getting into fight or flight and keeping fight or flight sustained. That is what produces the cortisol. That is what makes this constant and chronic stress that we don't want you to be in. dealing with others. I don't know if you can read this cartoon. The Blurt Foundation has like some really funny images, but it's one person says, "You shouldn't be worried all the time. You're doing fine." The other person says, "Wow, thank you. You've cured my anxiety." How many well-meaning people? And we also, let me just say too, it's really helpful to assume that everybody has positive intent. Your mother-in-law who is like, if you just had tea every night, it would work. And your co-worker who's like, I had a friend of a friend who went on vacation and she tried everything and she came back. They really are trying to help. So assume positive intent. They just don't know what you're going through. But it's very difficult when you hear that over and over to not be frustrated or resentful. So work on strengthening the boundaries. Hey, you know, every time you bring up that vacation story, it makes me feel like a little bit frustrated. Can we shelve that for now? That's fair. But the other thing I want you to think about is other people can't hurt your feelings, right? We grew up as a kid. Somebody, you know, I got picked last for a sport. That coach hurt my feelings. You know what? The coach didn't hurt my feelings. What I made that mean hurt my feelings. My interpretation of that event hurt my feelings. So the person that says to you, your mother-in-law, you need to have a cup of tea every night, you're like, oh my God, she is this. She's trying to manipulate me. She's disrespectful of me. She doesn't understand what I'm going through. The simple fact is your mother-in-law is recommending tea and you are making it mean these things that are character flaws for you. We all do it. It's not a judgment. But you get to decide how you're going to respond to people. And let's say it is somebody who's a little bit more malicious or less of a positive intent. This is what you have control over. Your response to it and who you want to be in this situation. There's going to be a lot of stuff when you go through an infertility cycle that you don't have control over and a lot of waiting around. The waiting is so incredibly frustrating. But how are you going to react in that time and who are you going to be in that moment? That's what you have control over. I just want to point out, because you may have heard of a hormone called oxytocin, and it is the hormone that is released by the part of the autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. Its release causes the body to do something called rest and digest. So in fight or flight, your body is prepared for a predator, it's prepared to run, it's prepared to freeze. All the blood flow goes to the heart, brain, and the lungs, and the extremities. It leaves the digestive system and it leaves the respiratory system, not obviously completely, but it's shunted from them. Oxytocin does just the opposite. So we want to be in this state of having this regular amount of oxytocin as much as possible. It's called the vagal nerve, you might hear of this vagal theory. So what causes the release of oxytocin? Warm temperature, skin-to-skin contact, social connectedness, and intimacy and sex. You may have felt that as you're getting ready to try, that your sex has become a little bit mechanical, timed. Maybe there's some discordance between the couple about who wants to. Maybe nobody wants to now. But that intimacy, that feeling that you can get after a really intimate, very emotional sex can create this oxytocin, which can cause the rest and digest, which then gets the blood flow to the reproductive system. It's why that's one of the reasons that it goes to the reproductive system, is to really kind of nourish the uterus. So think about that. Think about skin-to-skin contact. That's one of the reasons why it was so hard with COVID. So we're on these screen shares and we're stimulated. So I have adrenaline in the system, I have epinephrine in the system, but I don't have any oxytocin because there's no skin-to-skin contact. As a nurse in COVID, it's very difficult for me not to hug a patient, not to give somebody a high five, not to let them see my face and see my expression. Your body, particularly the upper part of your forehead, and when you have a real smile, your body notices that and other people notice that and they relax when the smile is at. Without being able to show that with these masks, with this distancing, we're really missing out on that. It's caused a lot of stress for people. So these are the ways that you can reach me. And I do, at my website, I do have places to reach me there, and my email is listed there. Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on. Facebook, not so much, but I probably will get a notification. I'm trying to not have as many notifications, but if you want to reach me, you can reach me in any of these places. And then I'm happy to, I do coach couples. I do almost all of my coaching by Zoom. I don't do hardly anything in person now. You know, I'm happy to talk. It's actually great when couples, I usually do workshops for couples. It's amazing when both partners are involved, because especially if you're going to make a change in sleep pattern, a change in eating, a change in exercise, you really need the rest of the house to be on board. It's too difficult to do that stuff alone. So I encourage that very much. So I think we're going to get Caroline to the
Yeah.
question, right?
Excellent. Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. Lots of useful information already, indeed. And we are not done with that yet. So let's go to the most common questions. And of course, after that, we will go right to your questions. There are a few questions already, but of course, remember, if you have any, just go ahead and type those in the chat section. And now let's go to the first question from those most common ones. Here it is. So, does weight matter when undergoing infertility treatments?
Gosh, everybody asks me this. The short answer is, if you're at either extreme of weight, incredibly underweight, or in one of the class 2, 3 obesity categories, it can be detrimental to both achieving a pregnancy, carrying a pregnancy to term, and the size of your baby. So if you are an extreme category, then it would help to kind of move a little bit more towards the middle in terms of the normal, overweight, or the lower of the obesity classes. In saying that, what I will say is there have been a couple of studies now actually done in Europe, and they're longitudinal studies, meaning they look at people over time. So they're incredibly hard to do, but they're so helpful in terms of interpreting data, where they told people you have obesity, and in order to go through a treatment, you need to lose weight, you need to lose it quickly. When those people lost weight really quickly, obviously they did it in a usually unhealthy way, changing their outside wasn't enough to change their inside, likely, is a likely reason, because what we're seeing is their pregnancy rates and their delivering a healthy baby weight were not that much better than those who didn't end up losing the weight. So I would tell you to use some of the habits we talked about to get more towards the middle. Of course, you want to get to the lowest sustainable weight that you can do, but not if it means rash dieting, because then what that does is it changes the metabolic picture in your body. It makes your body think it's under stress, it's starved, it's deprived, and that's not the state you want your body to be in when you're attempting pregnancy.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering this and explaining this, of course, to us as well. And let's have a look at the next question. Other than nutrition, how can I best prepare my body for infertility journey?
Well, I would say the regular movement. So I see a question there on thoughts about running and exercise during pregnancy. So I'm a runner. I actually I did you know, I have kids, and it was very difficult for me to, and I struggled with infertility. Let me just say that. So I was a runner before. That was my form of stress release. Then I was told by my doctor once I get pregnant to not run because it's shunting the blood away from the body. I do know of people who are like marathon runners, very dedicated runners who do run those distances during pregnancy, but they sort of do it against medical advice. Does it mean that running, the issues with running are mostly theoretical? You're shunting the body away from the uterus, but there still should be some sort of movement. It doesn't matter. And the movement should precede the pregnancy. We want whatever you were doing before, you should be able to maintain, but maybe just at a different level of intensity. You do not want to be starting the hardcore exercise program once you're pregnant. So I always tell people, if you could be moving around before, doing some kind of walking, and then I give people a couple of large muscle exercises to do. So planks, because you're using the core in the back, and then squats, like wall sits, because you're using the big muscles in the legs just to get those muscles fired up and increase the metabolism. And those you can do. Shouldn't be doing anything to like lay on your back. In terms of sleep, some of the stuff you mentioned, definitely get your sleep now. The sleep, poor quality sleep skews your hormones a lot. So not just the hunger and satiety hormones, but your reproductive hormones, theoretically. So getting great quality sleep really can help with what's called insulin sensitivity, or reducing your resistance to insulin, which can be detrimental. And then working on some of those stress relief strategies that we'll probably talk a little bit more about. If you're a bike rider, it's okay to ride a bike. The issue with riding the bike once you are pregnant, once you get a little bit bigger, is your center of gravity can change. You can become a little bit wobbly on the bike, and then it becomes a safety issue. So it's not the riding the stationary bike, it's riding a bike, and the potential of falling off, even when you've never fallen off before. It's just a little bit more difficult to keep that weight balance. And so if you rode a bike before, you can continue to ride a bike. Once you get a little bit bigger, your doctor or clinician might recommend a stationary bike. Also, you don't want to let your temperature get too hot. That temperature change is often changes in terms of what your OB wants. Some of the OBs have a lower threshold, but you don't want to allow too much heat.
Yes, thank you so much for answering that question already when it comes to this one as well, of course. So thank you for that advice. And I just wanted to add that, as you can see, the patient has also added, I'm a dedicated runner like you, have run marathons. So thank you so much for this indeed already as well.
Here's the other caveat to that, Claire. So often when people go through an infertility treatment, you've had a long road, right, by the time that you're able to achieve a pregnancy. Hopefully it's short. For many people, it's longer than they wanted it to be. What we don't want as nurses and as the people taking care of you is if there's any kind of issue, challenge with the pregnancy, worst case scenario, a pregnancy loss. Even if we didn't attribute it to the running or to whatever it is that the person's asking to do, people ask for all different kinds of things. We just don't want you to look back and be like, you know what, I wish I wouldn't have done X, Y, Z. So some of it is for peace of mind. If you were not going through fertility journey, your OB might say, great, because you wouldn't then go back and blame yourself and say, gosh, why did I have to do that one thing? If you feel comfortable doing it and your OB is comfortable with it together, and it becomes an educated decision and it becomes very intentional, and you feel that the running, the benefits of it outweigh the possible risk and the possible mental risk to say, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done this because this thing happened, then I think that that would be a personal decision, but it would be the right one for you.
And perfect. Thank you so much for adding this to that question, of course, that comment as well. And I already want to show you that there is a thank you just for you for that answer. Thank you so much. All right. And let's go to the next question as well, which is, how can I best prepare my mind for infertility journey?
This is the part that I love, and I can probably address the acupuncture question this little bit. So I love acupuncture as long as the acupuncture provider is somebody that is well versed in women's health and in reproductive health, because there are certain acupuncture points that can cause uterine stimulation. Obviously, we do not want these. We don't want uterine contraction or stimulation. So acupuncture, acupressure, reflexology, a lot of them work on this idea. So there's an idea that our emotions are energy, right? They're vibrations in our body. And so ideally, we want these vibrations to be able to flow easily and not have any blockages. A lot of times what ends up happening is that something causes a blockage. And this is more like kind of an Eastern medicine principle, but there's these meridians, these channels through which the vibration flows. So by unblocking these channels, which can be done in a couple different ways, you might have the energy flow. You increase your vibration, meaning these good feelings, these feelings of well-being, this feeling of expansiveness, the opposite of contracting. And by doing that, it makes you much more resilient, both mentally and physically, to deal with infertility treatments and just to be able to achieve a pregnancy. I think acupuncture is great if you can get in to see somebody. Same with reflexology. They need to have a knowledge of reproductive health, so they're not hitting those other points. The other thing I would say is, I don't know if you've ever heard of something called tapping or EFT, but EFT is a way of getting the acupressure, the meridian points at their beginning and end. So there's 8 acupressure points and a karate chop point. So you would do this, and then as you tap these points, you're kind of saying, even though I am worried about my infertility treatment, I choose to love and accept myself. And then you would do these points here, and then the points here, and the points here. So EFT is another great way, if you have acupuncture, to kind of keep those acupressure points up and expanded and open. I love journaling. I think journaling is great. I think it gets the crazy kind of out of your head and onto a piece of paper. I also tell people when they go through fertility treatments, because of that feeling of lack, to keep something called an achievement journal or achievement diary. And I know a lot of people know about gratitude diaries, and I think gratitude is amazing, but I want people who have this sense of nothing's working for me, I can't do anything right, to feel a sense of achievement. So all you need to do is to have this paper. It could be like a little, I actually I tell people just to get this calendar that kind of has just a couple of lines, and just make a couple of bullet points and say what you did that day, as little or as big as it was. You know, it could be I got stopped at every red light and I didn't lose my mind. I wanted to react this way and I didn't. I was able to turn my phone off and did these my notifications off, and I was able to work on this project fully through for an hour and a half, or really do some deep work. So the achievement journal does two things. One is that you can go look back on it and be like, what the heck did I do all day? I actually did all this stuff. The other thing is it prepares your mind to write in the journal. So as you go about the day, you're thinking to yourself, I know I have to write in my achievement journal, what did I do as an achievement? And it allows you to see things that maybe you didn't see as a big deal before as being an achievement, these little things. In terms of the tips and techniques to help us, so getting good quality sleep. So in terms of tips and techniques, that slide that I showed you would be really helpful in terms of tips and techniques when they sleep. A cold room between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. I know you guys use Celsius, and I don't know what the conversion of that is. I'm so bad with that. A cold room, dark. If you want anything warm, if you feel like you're too cold, put the warm thing at your feet, like a warm blanket, because it will keep your core cooler. Sometimes doing the achievement journal at night, or having a piece of paper and a pencil at night where you can write everything down and do what I call a brain dump and just get it all out of your system, so that when you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't have other things to think about because you already wrote them down. Just like not doing stuff in bed other than sleeping. You know, if you need to read to go to sleep, then the reading and the going to sleep. I do have people that wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and they cannot get back to sleep, and they stay in bed and they stay in bed and they start to panic. So what I say is, if you can't really sleep and it's been a couple minutes, to get out of bed, to go into the other room, get a book, a cup of tea, or do something that whatever makes you sleepy. And then as soon as you start to get sleepy, go back in bed, because you're strengthening that muscle in your mind that makes you realize that your bed is for sleep. And that way, when you wake up, your body will like wake up and be like, okay, the bed is for sleep. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to be checking my computer. No lights. So in terms of electronics, this is something that I tell a lot of people, and nobody likes me. Really, you should not have electronics on about an hour before you sleep. It's not only the stimulation, it's the light. It's the blue light. It stimulates something that subconsciously, it stimulates these substances like adrenaline and epinephrine and stuff that can keep you up. So if you want to read, you should read an actual book, newspaper, magazine, if that helps you get sleepy. But any electronics, really start to shut down if you can. If you watch TV, I'd love for the TV to be not in your room. So you're watching TV, and as you start to get sleepy, you turn the TV off, and then you go in your room and go to bed. Watching TV in bed, or falling asleep with the background noise, all it is conditioning your body to not see your bed as your respite, as your kind of oasis, as the place where you sleep. So it's just like what we said before. It's like you don't sit at the dinner table waiting to be hungry. You get at the dinner table once you are already hungry, or once dinner's prepared. So I hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those tips and answering, of course, those questions. And of course, there's a thank you from our patient right here for you as well. And let's go to the next question. And of course, that is on what is the quickest way to reduce stress.
So the breathing that I had mentioned before, those breathing techniques for sure. But I do love the tapping. There are some apps that I recommend. So there's a tapping app, and why don't I write that in the chat? And what they actually have a lot of free, let's see here, tapping. They actually have a lot of free ones for Corona. And then if you want specific ones, they actually, I think, have one on if not infertility, but attempting to conceive, which is great. I love the tapping. I just think that it's like, you know, if somebody says, when you do an affirmation, I am great, I am strong, I am healthy, but they don't feel real to you. The tapping tells the part of your brain that is the alarm to calm down and to kind of take it all in. So those affirmations, those mantras, those things that you're saying to yourself really mean something. The other app that I like that is free is Insight Timer. That has a ton of free meditations. In fact, it is the largest free library of meditations, and I love that they have these mini meditations. So if you only have 5 minutes, you go for the one that's 5 minutes. If you want to go if you like a certain teacher, you go to that certain teacher. If you want a certain topic, you go to that certain topic. There's also an app called Fertile Calm. That is, I believe it's free as well. It has a lot of those minis. It was actually made by a friend of mine who is a psychologist who specializes in infertility. And so that's another good one. And then there's other apps like Calm that are good, but the ones that I typed here I love. And I think you'd be surprised about the tapping. And it's like I just am getting like certified with that. I feel like the results are so impressive. They're also impressive with weight control and cravings. Because it's one of those things that you don't need to know how it works for it to work, which is really good for us that kind of don't trust. One of the questions is how to deal with feelings of frustration. So the one thing I will say is the boundaries, because one of the ways that people feel frustrated is that a boundary is being crossed. So if the person that is crossing the boundary doesn't know you have that boundary, then you need to tell them. If they know you have the boundary and they repeatedly cross it, that's a different conversation. So you give them a couple chances and then you say, remember we talked about this, so if that's where it's coming from. But that feeling of helplessness, I think, is what often causes that feeling of lack, of frustration. And what I will tell you is, it's that slide that I showed you of the continuum. It's okay to say right now I'm feeling incredibly frustrated, but I choose to whatever, love and honor myself. I choose to see myself as this. I also tell people to do something that makes them feel that they can accomplish it quickly. This could be decluttering. There's also a really good, your mind will sort of think when you declutter a cabinet. Let's say that after this talk, you decide, oh, I'm going to change around my refrigerator. I'm going to put things into sections. I'm going to change around my pantry. And I always tell people, make a little drawer, little space in your pantry that's just for you, that has all of your healthy stuff in it, or your refrigerator. So you just pull out that bin. You don't look at all the other unhealthy stuff in there. That little act makes you feel a sense of accomplishment, and then has a positive connotation. So it is that. Connecting with people who are also going through this can make a big difference. Sitting with that feeling of frustration and not feeling like you're not supposed to have it. I always tell people, it's very difficult to sit with the feeling. We want to repress it. We want to ruminate on it. Sometimes it's okay just to sit there and just think, I'm frustrated right now. And if you just allow it, it will go through. Now, it may take a little bit longer than 90 seconds because it's been sitting in there a while. It may be associated with some other story, but if you let go of the story and you just allow yourself to have that feeling, then you can go look at your accomplishment journal and look at all the things that you actually do well. Because what we want to say to ourselves, I can't do anything right. Nothing ever works for me. And it becomes this all or nothing mentality. We can't help it. We're so frustrated. So then you need to go find evidence to the contrary, and that would be in your success or achievement journal. So there's a couple other interventions that take time and practice that I work with people a lot about their inner voice, but it takes practice. It's not something that you can just do, quickly, but it is something that you can do over time.
And perfect. Thank you so much again for providing the tips on the apps you have just mentioned, but of course also on answering all those questions. And now let's have a look at the final questions when it comes to those most common ones as well. So how can I deal with others during my infertility journey?
Yeah, I kind of have covered, I think I covered that a little bit in
Yes.
my slides. But I do think that the most comforting thing and the easiest thing is what I mentioned in the slides, which is assume positive intent. Assume no one's being malicious. Assume that that person thinks they're being helpful. That really helps, because as soon as you see your mother-in-law coming, you're gonna be like, oh, here we go again. But if you think to yourself, she's doing the best that she can, she feels helpless and powerless too. This is how she thinks she's helping. First of all, it takes a little bit of the edge off. That doesn't mean not to set boundaries with her, and it doesn't mean she's not going to like that. She's going to like the boundaries, but I still think that's incredibly important. But just don't assume that. The other thing is like I said, it's what we make stuff mean. So if you feel that somebody coming to your ignoring your text is disrespectful, and you're making it mean that that person really just might have been busy, then you're getting upset about something was not that person's intention. So assuming positive intent can really make that, and then changing the story and just being like, is this a story? Just really stopping and acknowledging, like, wait a minute, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? What is the story I'm telling myself? A lot of them are programmed for us from childhood. The other thing is that we have been told you work really hard at a goal and you get it, right? So you practice a sport, you get good at the sport. You eat really well and you exercise, you can be a little bit more fit. You study hard at school, you get a good grade. Well, you can study all you want about fertility treatments, and they are going to happen or not, and you can do all that you can to do it, and it still you might not achieve a pregnancy as early as you like, but that doesn't mean the fault is with you. It doesn't mean that you are lacking, so don't make it mean that, because that's what the first thing that's going to come out. I can't, I'm not. Look for this all or nothing thinking and try to get yourself in the middle of it, but realize when it comes to others that they mean well. But there might be that you have to unfollow some people on social media. Maybe their stuff's annoying. Maybe somebody's always posting stuff about baby showers, and you are at that age where you're going to everybody's baby shower, but you don't want to see it all the time. You don't want to see everybody's back to school pictures. There was a gentleman that I was talking to about when I did this male factor infertility talk, and he said that having infertility feels like not having a date on Valentine's Day 365 days of the year, right? No one understands that unless somebody's gone through it. So they're trying to do the best that they can. So give them that, but still protect yourself and protect your energy. Remember your vibrations. Don't let somebody else take away that energy from you. You don't give them that power, but that takes a lot of kind of time and practice. There was a question about supplements, I think, and
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Let
So my
me just
perspective is always to eat the food as opposed to getting something from a supplement whenever possible. There's something about the way that the food is packaged, whether it's in a cell membrane, that makes your body digest it and use it better than taking the supplement. That being said, if you don't like fatty fish, let's say, or tuna or sardines, then you might need omega-3s. So I think omega-3s, fatty acids, are really important. I prefer that people eat them as opposed to taking them as a supplement. But if you are not somebody, like I said, that likes that fatty fish, I think omega-3s. I think you should get your vitamin D tested. Vitamin D is actually a hormone, not a vitamin. It means it's what's produced in one part of the body. It's used in all the other parts of the body. There's vitamin D receptors in the ovaries, the uterus, the testes. Many people's vitamin D levels are low, and a vitamin D is an easy supplement to take. So you should be tested for vitamin D. There is some literature on CoQ10, and that CoQ10 can help make the energy generator of the cell, which is important for cell division, which is basically what reproduction is, act more efficiently. So for some people, if they're deficient in CoQ10, taking CoQ10 can help, but it really only helps if you're deficient in it. The thing is, we don't test you for CoQ10. So some infertility centers are putting everybody on it, and some infertility centers are only putting certain people on it. I would look up or ask what the level is that they want you to be on it. For some people, it's like 300 a day. Some people, it's 300 twice a day. And ask them if it's applicable to you and if they would like to do it. It's mostly been shown in animal studies to be helpful, but it hasn't been shown to be harmful in any way to humans. But I would just double check that that's what your clinician would want for you.
And again, thank you so much for answering that question and, of course, all the tips you have provided. And now there is not a question, but I just want you to see it. I have no questions, but what she says is gold.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope so.
Thank you so much. And actually, next one is you have already mentioned this, but perhaps you can take a look at the next part of it. Do you also offer coaching to couples? It is hard to convince my husband to work on his eating
Yes.
habits.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So here's what I have to say about that. Yes, it is. And a lot of people feel that way. It's very difficult to make a big change in a vacuum. You can't live with somebody and you're the one that makes the change. What I will tell you is this. As a nurse, a lot of male partners will say to me, or partners, if they're same-sex female partners, will say to me, what can I do? I feel so helpless. I feel so powerless. She's doing everything and I control the finances, but otherwise there's nothing else to do. Well, this is what they can do. And if they don't say they feel powerless, then you can say, hey, I want to talk to you because I am getting ready to go through this journey. I feel and I've been told that making a couple of these changes could really give me a better and quicker potentially outcome, make me have a healthier pregnancy should I get pregnant, the baby a healthier weight, less of a chance of C-section, etc. It's going to be very difficult for me to do this on my own. Is this something that you would do with me? But make it very clear that it's for both of you. And if you have a partner who says that they feel powerless or how can I help or what can I do, this is something that they can do. They can be all in on this with you so that you're not making this one change by yourself.
And thank you so much for answering this particular question. Actually, there's another question. Okay. When you work with a couple, how do you get men to open up about their thoughts, emotions around male infertility?
So sometimes I can get this to happen in a couple situations. Sometimes I can only get it to happen with just a male group. And often when the male group, if I have just a male group, I often have a male facilitate it with me. Because the first session, I don't even try to get into this because no one's willing to talk about stuff. Sometimes by the second or third sessions, there's brings up, but what happens is one person in the group will bring up how they feel. So I feel like for a lot of men, they feel like they are not the patient as well. The staff, barely sees them. They don't really contact them. They get a semen analysis done and their wife gets the results for a lot of places. So they feel like they are persona non grata. If there's any percent of chance that there is a male factor, which is almost 40% now with infertility, that there's a male contributing or a sole factor for infertility. There's a guilt, there's shame, then there's the powerlessness. They want to have a family, but they also see their partner being upset and they feel powerless to stop it. So they have to be willing to do it. They have to understand it, but often it happens best when they have a counterpart or somebody that's going through this to talk to them. So it's almost better, I find, in like a group with other males. Couples, sometimes it will come out, but a lot of the times when men are just with other men, it comes out. It starts as like, do you believe my wife wants me to do this? And she shows her stick. She's like, I'm ready. It's time, and everyone's like, I can't produce, but that will bring out the deeper feelings that are underlying these behaviors. And that's like when we get into the real kind of like crux of it. So I would say to try to find a good support group that is for men, that a lot of mental health professionals are starting to have now. The men groups that are facilitated or led by men, in my opinion and with my experience, are the ones that really get to that.
And thank you so much for that question, indeed, as well as your help with this and answering, of course. And well, there is another question, quite a longer one. Okay, so let's have a look at it. I'm starting to get very stressed yet again as I'm starting the 12th IVF journey with another donor. My own resulted in miscarriages or no pregnancy at all. I'm worried regarding everything. The cryo shipping, getting my husband's sperm to the clinic on time for egg retrieval is a worry. Finding a surrogate will be a worry. Will the surrogate be doing the everything right is a worry. I can feel myself starting to feel helpless, but I'm doing all the research I can to stop myself from feeling like this. How can I stop my heart rate going up, which started again last night when thinking about it and couldn't sleep?
Well, first I can say that you have reason to be stressed. So, there's a saying that I will make G-rated, but there's a saying that this one psychologist says that when people come to her for therapy, what's the one question or one thing that she wants to make sure? And what she says is, I want to make sure the person doesn't need therapy, and not just that they're just surrounded by a bunch of jerks or in a terrible situation. Well, you are in a stressful situation. So absolutely your story, if you think about that continuum, your story is going to be, this isn't going to work. This never works, right? It is, and I would be the same way. So I completely understand and know that other people in the situation. This, your story, your perspective, your bias is, this isn't going to work because it hasn't in so many cycles for you. Statistically and theoretically speaking, and without knowing your medical condition or your chance of conceiving, with a donor cycle and a carrier, the chance should be pretty high, especially if you end up using pre-genetic screening, which is an additional expense. But what I can say is, when it feels like too much, and it can, you can use the stress techniques, but really what you need to do is to just think of, what do I need to do at this moment, at this particular time? So 3 in the morning, there's nothing to do, right? But that doesn't work at 3 in the morning. This is going to take practice so that at the 3 in the morning, you get to that point. So what do I need to do first? So it looks like you did your research. Okay. Then the next decision is, when you're looking for a surrogate, is, do I trust this person? You look through her records. You probably have talked to her on some kind of screen share. Good, you did genetic screening. Okay. So that theoretically, the success rate of a donor with genetic screening with a surrogate is high, but it's not 100%. It might be 70-something% in a good clinic, but it's not 100%. So it's very good, but it's not a sure thing. And that's the hard part. So the only thing that you can do is to take small steps one at a time, and to not attribute this to you having something wrong with you. So the problem is, because of all this lack of control in this particular infertility setting, you are experiencing a lack of control in other ways. And then what you might try to do in life is try to control all these things. But the thing is that some things you can't control. Some things you just have to let go, and then just say, what is the next thing I can do? Okay, I need to get up from this chair if you feel like powerless. The next thing I can do, I need to walk into the kitchen. What's the next thing I can do? I'm going to go to this app. And what I tell people is to kind of create like a nourishment menu. So 5 to 10 things that make you happy. Some of them are going to be quick. They could be like a beautiful sunset, right? That's going to be quick. Some of them are going to be something that takes practice. Maybe it's tapping or something for you. But you do need to acknowledge, I feel stressed and out of control. I feel helpless, powerless. I feel these things, but I don't want it to be like, this is never going to work for me. I am deficient. I am anything black and white, because you're not, first of all, and secondly, it's just not helpful. So if there's anything that you can do when you start to get into this thought, to be like, oh, here we go. And sometimes it's calling it something. Sometimes if you're anxious, to call it like a silly name. I'm having the goobly goop. I'm having this thing, this goobly goop happen to me, just to take the level of intensity off of it. Because if you say anxiety, you're like, whoo, what am I going to do about anxiety? You can't just fix anxiety. Here it comes again, or you can call it a name. Here comes Carol. Carol is like telling me this isn't going to happen again. Make it into the third person, kind of separate it away from you. Understand that the stuff that you have control over, you're doing, and you're going to do in small steps. And the other stuff you have to kind of leave up to fate to work. Some of this is a roll of the dice. Like if this first, I've seen beautiful embryos go in somebody that don't get pregnant the first cycle, and not so beautiful embryos and they get pregnant the second cycle, and I can't tell them why. It just happens. But by doing this, you are going to, by really strengthening your inner part of you, your strengths that you already have, becoming aware of them, realizing how resilient you were to get up to 12 cycles, to be able to do that and keep going with this, and strengthening that inner part of you, you are going to be your own safe place to land, so to speak. You are going to be your own best advocate, your own best friend. Therefore, if something else happens that's good, that's just icing on the cake. You have everything that you need inside you right now. This is just, anybody else saying this or doing this or something going perfectly is just extra. It's just topping, because everything that you need you have inside of you, and this is going to be something that, although you desire it, it doesn't mean that you're lacking because you haven't had it yet, and that's a big difference. I hope that makes sense.
And thank you so much, Monica, for answering this. And of course, all the tips you have provided. I am sure it is useful. So, huge thanks for that. And it
Sure.
seems that this was our last question. However, of course, if you have any questions left, you can go ahead and type those in. If not, we will be finishing. But of course, I also want to mention that if you have any other questions in mind and you would like to perhaps get in touch with Monica, I'm sure she'll be more than happy to help you out with all the questions that you might have. So, you can always reach her, and I'm sure, as I mentioned, she'll be happy to schedule any consultations for you as well. And well, someone is typing, so I definitely want
That's
to
me.
make
I'm
sure.
typing. I'm putting my email in there.
Excellent. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. I was
so if
about to
anybody
ask
wants to
you.
copy and
Uh,
paste and send me an email, then you can do it through there.
exactly. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And of course, as you can see, there is another thank you for answering the question, the
Oh, my
answer to the
pleasure. Thanks a
question.
lot.
And well, yes, now everyone, you do have Monica's email address. So if you need anything at all, you can use it, and I'm sure she'll be happy to help you out. And well, I already would like to thank you so much for joining us, for supporting our initiative, Stronger Together initiative. And as you can see, I can only agree with all our patients. Thank you. This has been really informative, and there are more, of course, coming up.
I'm so happy, and I want to say to everybody that even just going or attending something like this or being part of this, where you understand the importance of self-care, means that you're taking a necessary step. So even if it's just, she said something about this, I'm going to research this, and it brings you to the next step, you're already leaps and bounds ahead of other people that just think it's about, the medicine, or it's about whatever it is, but there's a lot that can be done by you taking care of yourself.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I just want to mention that someone has asked if this was recorded, and I just want to assure you that it has been recorded. Therefore, you will be able to find it on our YouTube channel, but also with the email address I have just sent to you, and it will be right there tomorrow. So don't worry if you missed the beginning. You will be able to watch this once more. And I just want to also mention that all the events have been already uploaded on myivfanswers.com. But also, if you would like to find them, you can simply find them on our YouTube channel. And if you follow us on our Facebook or Instagram, you will be updated of what's coming next. Because as you know, today there is another webinar, Journey to Surrogacy. So I can only encourage you to join us today, because at 8 p.m. UK time, this will be our last event before our summer break. So I can only encourage you to join us. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us, for all the questions. And Monica, it has been excellent to have you with us. So thank you so much. And thank you for also supporting our initiative. You
I
are
loved it. Yeah.
our
Thank you for
ambassador
having me.
after all. So huge thanks for that. It has been a pleasure. And well, I just hope we will be able to go back after summer and have more of such great events with you as well. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
And to
Have a
all
great night.
to the rest of you, have a lovely and relaxing evening. Take care. Bye.